So now, let's take a look at the latest state of the races for other Just Democrats running for Congress in California. Audrey Denny in the 1st District of California, I thought she had good energy, a right attitude, was doing the right things to get into the runoff. And in the beginning of the night, she was in 5th place, and I thought, we literally had this discussion, and I said, well, maybe I'm not a good judge. Maybe that doesn't mean anything. Well, it turns out, no, I am a good judge. Audrey Denny in 2nd place, and now looks to be in very good shape to make the runoff. So she's at 16.3%. Her Democratic opponent is at 12.4%, so almost a 4-point lead, and now a solid 49% reporting.
Yeah.
So that's a real number, and that puts her in a really good position to get into the runoff. Still a Republican-held district, and the Republican got more votes, but there's a lot of Democrats who split up the vote there. The incumbent is only at 51.8%. That's vulnerable. So,
and I think people still are underestimating the blue wave, and I know I don't want to make people get complacent, but people are motivated, even more so than the Tea Party in 2010, which a lot of people like to compare it to. But Trump is the kind of president that could energize a Tea Party-ish wave for Democrats, even more so in 2018.
And we haven't even, I know that it feels like the whole thing was a disaster, but we haven't even had a disaster yet. So Trump is capable of a mega world-changing disaster. And it hasn't happened yet. And thank God, I don't want it to happen.
Yeah.
But
because he could exploit something like that. I was reading Naomi Klein's book, and she talked about how if something horrific was to happen, he could just completely manipulate it in the way Bush manipulated 9/11, and that could be. I don't want anything to happen because he could actually generate support or go to war or something like that.
I keep coming back to it. I don't know how they haven't yet. Manufacture something or blown something out of proportion. It sounds like, with the sorts of people he's surrounding himself with, it shocks me, thankfully, that they have not resorted to that yet.
yeah, but on the other hand, let's say he does something like crash the stock market. Then all the Republican donors are mad. He's in a tailspin. The other Republicans don't want to back him. And then they walk into that 2018 election thinking, oh, this is a nice wedding that the Lannisters have paid for. So, all right, now more good news.
Music.
House District 25, we had Just Democrat in this race, Brian Caforio. Boom, 2nd place. Now, these districts, as you get further down California, are reporting a lot less. So only 10% reporting here. He's got about a 3-point lead on 3rd place. So that's good news, but definitely not settled, okay? Now I move down to, oh, by the way, Rosa Calderon, as I told you earlier, in the 4th district is not likely to win. Now, super interesting in the 34th district. This is not a Just Democrat, but it is a Green Party candidate that I interviewed, Kenneth Mejia. I always struggle with the name. For a guy named Cenk, I should do better. Anyway, well, the bad news in that race is for Kenneth is that Jimmy Gomez, the Democrat, with a crushing 78-point showing, with 12% reporting, but Gomez will obviously make it into the runoff, and he's the incumbent. But Kenneth, 2nd place at 11.9%. Here comes the Green Party. So not often you see a Green Party candidate in a position to get to a general election. He is, by the way, 3rd place is to a Libertarian. So root for Kenneth.
I just want to say one thing just in case. In that 25th district, Brian Caforio is in 2nd. The woman who's right behind him, Katie Hill, I just randomly checked just again to give you an idea of where we were at. She supports Medicare for All.
So
right behind the Justice Democrat. She's not a Justice Democrat, takes corporate money, but supports Medicare for All.
What district?
So that's good news. Now, everybody was worried about the 39th district. They had that as the most likely where Democrats would split up their vote and 2 Republicans would advance and not give the Democrats a chance to flip that seat. Ed Royce was the representative there, but he resigned. So they're going to have a new congressman. Ed Royce is a Republican, so that's more of a Republican-leaning district, obviously. And a Republican is in first place. Young Kim is. But Gil Cisneros, a Democrat, is solidly in second place. Still a lot to go. No, but in that case, no, 47% reporting. So his 3-point lead, much more likely to hold up. So I told you it was a needless panic, and it looks like it's a needless panic. You'll have a very standard Republican versus Democrat in the 39th district. So now we go down to the 49th district where we have another Justice Democrat, and that is Doug Applegate. He is the one that nearly upset Darrell Issa in 2016 in the closest election in the country. So of course the Democrats inserted a lot of other candidates into that race to muck it up, and they have. But Democrat will advance. That's another one they were worried, oh no, the Republicans are going to come in and get the top 2 spots. No, they're not. A Republican will get the top spot. Issa is retired, and Diane Harkey got a lot of the money and the support, institutional support, so she's going to advance as a Republican. But a Democrat will come in second. It's just not clear yet if it's Mike Levin, Sarah Jacobs, or Doug Applegate. But Applegate is trailing by about 3.7%. Still 81% of the precincts left to report, so he could make a comeback. And Levin and Jacobs are very close. Levin is better than Jacobs. Jacobs comes from big money. Levin is at least backed by PCCC, a good progressive group. And then
Levin supports Medicare for all.
And yes, he's got a lot of really good progressive positions. Yeah. So if he advances, not so bad. And then the 50th district. Duncan Hunter Jr.'s district, he's going to advance. He's the incumbent. So who's going to be up against him? Well, still only 14% reporting, but Amar Kampa-Najjar, the Justice Democrat, still holding on to a 1.7% lead. So okay shape, no, good shape, but a ton still left to report.
It hasn't actually updated in like an hour and a half.
Yeah, why is that?
Because California is maddening. Some places report right away, and some places sometimes take forever to report. So as we're doing this, it's 11 o'clock Pacific time in California. The polls have been closed for over 3 hours.
2 a.m.
So we are going to wrap it up because if we kept going, that 58th district might come in 2 weeks. So when it does, we'll let you know. But at the end of the night here, as happens frequently on election nights, now I've been on the air for 8 straight hours, and the Justice Democrats almost always rally. Oh, and by the way, in my good news wrap-up, I forgot to mention, I'll do it now, the first ever Justice Democrat, Ro Khanna, an incumbent, has also won and moved on. So it looks like there's going to be about 3 to 5. We'll see, of course, by tomorrow how many exactly more Justice Democrats move on. But it's a good number. And I kid around that they've rallied because it just happened to be that California was last. Justice Democrats did lose in New Jersey and in New Mexico, but in New Mexico, a wonderful progressive beat a Justice Democrat, Deb Haaland, has an excellent chance of winning the general election and will be the first ever Native American woman in Congress. More important, her policy positions are great. So lots of good news for progressives overall in the night. More Our Revolution candidates won. In fact, I think every Our Revolution candidate we mentioned won. I don't know that we got them all, but someone called Politico. And so as it's turned out on a lot of these election nights, nice progressive victories to end the nights. It's just a coincidence, a matter of when the states are going and when the results are coming in. But the Just Democrats, as usual, started with a rough beginning and now are going to win a bunch of these races at the end. So when you put all of them together, Working Families Party, we got a Green Party candidate going to the general election. You got Our Revolution, you got PCCC doing really well. And then you got Justice Democrats with maybe up to 5 candidates advancing. Not a bad night for progressives. So obviously it has to be noted that our favorite candidate, certainly my favorite candidate, Allison Hartson, did not win tonight, the Senate race, but still a ton of victories. We never thought it was going to be easy, and no one ever thought we would have these many victories. They thought we'd have no victories. Instead, we're now in the dozens of victories. And by the way, our revolution was derided for having a 40% win rate for a new group is amazing. Now their percentage win rate is way better. Last election night, they won 7 out of 12. Here, they've done really, really well. So overall, progressive groups, as young as they are, as new as they are, have been doing fantastic.
Yeah.
If you told me when we started Just Democrats that by the time California has voted, and you're about halfway through the primaries, that you would have, we had 11 advancing, we'll probably have another 3 tonight, we would have 14 going to the general election, I'd have been like, are you sure? I'm optimistic, but that's a lot.
I would have attacked you physically. I would have been overcome with rage. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but there's still, I mean, if they do a report on it, if they report on it in the mainstream press, it's going to be, well, why weren't there more? It's disappointment from the progressive wing. Because I don't know, I mean, that was the framing of that Politico article, and then there's radio silence when it comes to successes.
That's because the establishment press doesn't believe in progressives, has an enormous bias against them, not because they hate them, but because in the groupthink of Washington is like progressives have no power and they never will have power, okay? And money, who's got more money? And so in that context, when you talk about how we're gonna run uncorrupted candidates not taking corporate PAC money, they're like, oh, please, you'll never win, except for all these wins. What happened? I thought we would never win. I thought we wouldn't get any victories. I guess you were wrong about that, but not a lot of times will you get mainstream media reporting. This breaking news, it turns out we were totally wrong.
Not to pile on to Politico, but I don't really care.
Go ahead and pile on.
Like every single report that they do about any candidate, it doesn't matter. It's about their fundraising power and how much money they raise. Like New York Times, Washington Post, they won't obsess over that in the way Politico does. And the only time a progressive gets credit in a Politico piece, for the most part, is, wow, they really exceeded expectations and they raised a lot of money. I mean, that's all they see. And it's unbelievable to me as someone who doesn't live in Washington and someone who covers politics that that's the only thing that they care about. Never policy, just fundraising, and they are the worst of all of the major outlets when it comes to that.
Yeah. And the great example of that, which I've shared before, is the person we interviewed earlier tonight in our live coverage. And by the way, don't miss any of our live coverage on any election night. Always go to tyt.com/live or get the app, the TYT app. Just type in TYT in the App Store. And you'll get to see these wherever you are. You can just take it on with you on your phone, obviously. So Kara Eastman, we had her on earlier tonight in this election coverage. She won an upset victory in Nebraska, and she's a Justice Democrat. Politico wrote, ha ha, our revolution didn't endorse her, but didn't mention that Just Democrats did, and that they helped that candidate tremendously. They will only report the negative. They don't realize it, but they have massive bias against progressives and against the uncorrupted. So they revel in that corruption without fully recognizing that they do.
It's also just this fetishizing of the establishment that they love. They love being in Washington, they love reporting on it, and they love the esteem of Congress and the men and women there and the White House. And they feel as if they are a part of history and they are a part of the great reporting of Politico when they're actually ass.
Well then, I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see as there are more and more incumbents who are endorsed by these groups, more and more incumbent JDs and all that. Are they going to update based on that? Because now the distinguished gentleman
at some point they'll be forced to.
So that's a great question, and Emma's absolutely right. So let me explain how we win and change that attitude and how they're forced to. By the way, let me note for the record, by the way, John Heenan is another Just Democrat in Montana is in a virtual tie right now.
Yeah.
And so what's the numbers there?
It's not, I wouldn't say he's down by 1.4%, so 32,070 to 33,460.
Okay, they've been going back and forth the whole night. What percentage?
74.
74. So now he's the underdog. Okay, yeah. But between him and Applegate, we'll see if one of them rises up. So a couple of other candidates possible. So how do the Just Democrats or progressives get real power and flip the establishment press into covering them? Well, first of all, you win some of these general elections. So right now they're still at, they won primaries. It doesn't count. It doesn't count. It doesn't count. Well, I thought you said the establishment Democrats with their more money were going to win these. It doesn't matter. I'm only going to talk about your losses. But you can't keep saying that if we win general elections. And then you say, all right, well, okay, general elections, but maybe they can. Maybe they can still ignore it. Hold. There's two other things that are going to make a big difference. If you knock out some of the people that they revere, so what Emma was just talking about, they look up to these guys like, oh, the honorable gentleman from Connecticut, right? Oh, you have power. So it would have been great if Allison knocked out Feinstein. It would have been perfect. Now, it didn't happen. But there are still a couple of those big possibilities. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York, if she knocks out Joe Crowley, the 4th-ranking Democrat in the House, earthquake. And then everyone will write that article. And they will, don't get me wrong, some of them in the beginning will be an initial glow of like, oh, something fun, exciting, different happened in politics. I didn't expect that. I'll write a positive article. My best guess is that'll happen in the beginning. And then they'll turn on her. And they'll say,
chances.
They had a Democrat who was raising a lot of money for other Democrats, and now that's gone. I hope you're happy, you progressives. But all of a sudden, they're fighting you. They're not ignoring you anymore, right? And so that's a good thing. And by the way, that smear job Politico did on our revolution, also, they're not ignoring anymore. Now we're in the fighting stage. You know, the last stage is the one where we win. So finally, when do they absolutely positively have to cover you? Is when you effect a vote in Congress. And by the way, that makes sense. That's where we got to get to. Mm-hmm. Eventually, we got to win the votes in Congress. But the first step is the minute a caucus of Justice Democrats, whether they're 14 or 6 or 24, it doesn't matter. The minute that caucus says no deal, we are not voting with the Democrats and we're not voting with the Republicans, we're not voting with corporate interests, we do not agree to that deal, and they swing a vote. Again, there will be rage in the political class. How dare they? We had a beloved bipartisan compromise that gave everything to our corporate overlords, right? How dare they break that up? These radical leftists. But we got your attention, didn't we? Yeah. So the next time Justice Democrats run, all those guys will write negative articles, but that's a great improvement.
But it's just worth noting, I would say, one more thing about media bias, that when it came to the Tea Party affecting change or the Tea Party swing, they were very quick to write those articles, and they were very quick to report on that. But it's going to take a tidal wave of progressives to get even a tiny article in something like Politico.
I think we're always going to see that because of the difference in how libs, and I don't mean political libs, but I mean libs in general operate and how the right does. I mean, how much in the beginning after Trump won, and even to this day, every lib reporter for every newspaper is doing profiles in cafes and trying to figure out the Trump voters. Okay, so if Sanders wins in 2020, do you think that like the right-wing publications are going to be heading to San Francisco to find out what are these left-wingers really thinking? You know, how do they live? No, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think. Just again, to prepare ourselves, let's say we get that caucus of 6 to 14 or 20 Justice Democrats. Partly, it's going to matter if they are the minority or the majority party. Are they going to control Congress? But especially, let's say that happens, and then we go another year and a half, and we get in 2020 we get more Justice Democrats and more our revolution, congressmen in there and senators as well, perhaps. And we get a strong progressive president, let's say hypothetically a Sanders. Once he's in power, who is he going to work with in the Senate and in the House? Is he going to spend all of his time bashing his head against Chuck Schumer? Or is he going to work against all of these strong progressives that have been working their way into Congress and the Senate as well? I think he's going to be tapping some of them for executive positions. Others will be helping him shepherd legislation through the process. And then you have to cover them.
That's right. And when we get the presidency, which we will in 2020, this whole dynamic is turned on its head. They respect power. So why do they cover the Tea Party more? Well, one, the right wing keep yelling at them, and they're scared of the right wing, so they respect that. Two, the Tea Party wasn't actually a grassroots movement. It was funded by the Koch brothers. So that's a lot of money. Yeah. So, I mean, it was, to be fair, it was a grassroots movement in the beginning, and it was immediately hijacked by the Koch brothers. So the politicals of the world were like, oh, money. There's money here, right? And right wing. So that's why they cover those guys more. But the Koch brothers are from Kansas. We're coming to Kansas. Brent Welder has an excellent chance. TYT member, Bernie Sanders delegate, has an excellent chance of beating Kevin Yoder, an establishment Republican with millions of dollars, one of the most corrupt guys in Congress. Payday lenders are his top donors. He takes from the big banks. He takes from everybody. If you beat a guy that corrupt, we view as corrupt, and Politico views as important and powerful and respected. They go, whoa, this guy with no PAC money just beat one of my favorite buddies that I go drinking with who had all the PAC money? Okay, now we got your attention.
And he has a team now.
That's right, because we got him a staff to run his volunteers. TYT helped raise over $50,000. Today went over $52,000 for Brent Welder. So you guys made that happen. If he beats Kevin Yoder and he shocks those guys and forces them to cover progressives, you made that happen. And Brent's also run a terrific campaign. But the bottom line is, we got to earn it. We got to get to that power. They'll never give it to us. They're not on our side. The idea of a liberal media bias is hilarious and preposterous.
And pervasive. They still think that.
And it is corporate media. Yes, they're a little bit more socially liberal, but when it comes to economic issues and corporate issues, they are massively conservative. So that is why we say we need a revolution. That's how the system is rigged, and a revolution doesn't happen overnight. We made some good steps today. Of course, there were some painful parts of it as well, but the revolution continues, and I think in 2020, they're going to see what that revolution looks like. So let's keep going and let's keep fighting, and I think with the great steps we made so far, we're going to get there.